Yo, what is up everybody, and welcome back to the 98 English course. In today's recording we're going to be going over Unit 6, Culture and Civilization, and as you know we always start with the key vocab and then we move on to listening. So here we go. We have anniversary, average, be born, birth, birthday, birth rate, blowout, celebrate, ceremony, costume, custom, death, death rate, die, event, falling population, fireworks, firework display, funeral, get married, growth, guest, happen, honeymoon, life expectancy, make a speech, marriage, occasion, parade, present, rising population, speech, and wedding. Okay, so that was the key vocab. Now let's move on to listening. So here we have exercise A, study the pictures, then answer the questions. So here we have three pictures, A, B, and C, and we have three different life events, actually very important life events happening here. Can you guys tell me what's happening in these photos? Yeah, we can say obviously a child is born. Here we can see a certain marriage tradition. I think it's particularly like Asian, like Korean maybe. And then we have a funeral. Someone is dead. Okay, so now let's go to the questions. Here we have, what is the connection between the three pictures? So what do you guys think? I mean, we can say that the connection is that it's three very important life events. We have birth, and then we have marriage, and finally death. Okay? And then we have what is happening in each picture, and we already answered that one. Here we have a child was born, here we have marriage, two people are getting married, and finally someone's funeral. Now let's go to exercise B, listen and match each sentence to a life event. So we're going to be listening to this, and as we go, so for example, for number one, I'll say, after the speaker finishes, I'll say A. So when I say A, that probably means I'm talking about the picture, right? So as in, this is a life event that the speaker is talking about, I'm just pointing it out, okay? So it's like matching each sentence to a life event. Let's go.
83. Unit 6. Culture and Civilization. Lesson 1. Listening. Exercise B1. Match each sentence to a life event.
1,
The average age for a woman to get married in the United States is 27.
B.
2,
In some cultures, a funeral is usually no more than 24 hours after a person dies.
C.
3,
In South Korea, only 1% of births are at home.
A.
4,
In many countries, a traditional white wedding is still the most popular option for a marriage.
B.
5,
25% of babies are born early, 70% are born late, and only 5% are born on the date that they are due.
A.
6,
More people visit Michael Jackson's grave than any other in the world.
C. And that was actually really interesting. I did not know that Michael Jackson's grave is the most visited grave. So, okay, so I'll come back to this. So this table right here, we'll get back to it in a second. So now that we know the life events, okay, and we matched the sentences, now let's go to this short lecture about life. And before we do that, I want you guys to take a look here at skills check 1, because this is actually really important and can help you understand new words coming forward. So you can often understand new words from the context. What does the context mean? A context is, or the context rather, we have, you see these words and pieces of information around the word that you don't understand? That's called the context. So we have, he puts a ring on the bride's finger, so ring equals this. So obviously you guys know what a ring is. right? So if let's say you don't know what a ring means. If if I read before and after the word, I can get a really good idea of what this word means. I might not be like 100% certain, but it can really help me out. So he puts a ring, keep in mind I don't know what a ring means, on the bride's finger. On the bride's finger, that makes it very obvious that that is a ring. Sometimes a lecturer explains a new word, right? So for example, during the wedding ceremony, the groom, that's the man who is getting married. That is a way that sometimes lecturers use when talking, but you gotta keep a close ear because these can pass you by quickly. So for example, if a lecturer is talking and he says, during the wedding ceremony, the groom, that's the man who is getting married, and he moves on, you might not catch it. Okay? So always keep your ears open. So during the wedding ceremony, the groom, by the way, groom means the man who is getting married on that day. Alright? So you'll see some examples as we go here in exercise C. So we have, listen to a short lecture about life and culture in the UK. Make notes in the customs column of the table. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is, you guys have a table here, and I want you guys to write some notes. Okay, so here we have life events, keywords, and some customs for each life event. I want you guys to write your own notes based on the audio here, and then I'll write my own notes and I'll show you as we go. Alright, so here, have a listen.
85. Exercise C. Listen to a short lecture about life and culture in the UK. Make notes in the customs column of the table.
Everybody is born, and everybody dies. Most people get married at some time in between. These three life events, birth, marriage, and death, are important in almost all cultures. I'm going to give you some information about each of these events in the UK and tell you about some special customs that are typical. Most babies are born in hospital rather than at home. Mothers feel the environment is safer. Sometimes women choose to have a second or third baby at home. Most babies are born late, and around a third are born early. Did you know that only 5% of babies are born on the date they're due? It's usual for friends and family to send a card and buy a present when a baby's born. People often buy baby clothes or a soft toy like a teddy bear. A lot of families have naming ceremonies to celebrate the arrival of a new baby with family and friends. Most women in the UK get married before they're 30. Men generally get married a little later. A traditional white wedding in a church is still the most popular type of ceremony. Friends and family celebrate a day that they'll always remember. During the wedding ceremony, the groom, that's the man getting married, puts a ring on the bride's finger. He puts it on the third finger of her left hand. The best man usually keeps the ring until the moment he passes it to the groom in church. A funeral is typically 3 to 6 days after a person dies, but can sometimes be later. When people go to a funeral, they wear black and often bring or send flowers. The family of the dead person usually buys a gravestone to mark his or her grave. They put the person's name and the date of his or her birth and death on the stone. They often put a sentence about the person too. Close family and friends visit a person's grave regularly.
Alright, so that was a short lecture about life and culture in the UK. So I hope you're able to get some notes down. So now let's see. Here we have the different life events. So let's start with number 1, birth, right? And the key word here is born. And for customs, what can we say? We can say that friends/family send a card and buy a present or a soft toy. Okay, that was one that I heard. And we could also say that some families have naming ceremonies. Remember, we also heard that. And then for the second life event, we have marriage. And the key word for that is wedding, right? Because it only makes sense to get married. I mean, it's obviously tradition to have a wedding. And for customs, the man usually puts the ring on the bride's left hand. And one more that we can actually say is the best man keeps the ring, right? And finally, we have death, and the key word for that is funeral, okay? Because almost all the human deaths have a funeral. So for customs, we can say that people wear black. That one's really important. Almost all funerals, people always wear black in funerals. And we can say that people bring or send flowers. That's also a big one. A family buys a gravestone. I'm pretty sure you guys know what a gravestone is, to mark the person's grave. And people visit the grave regularly. And we could also say that a sentence can be written about the person's gravestone. So, for example, if someone was a husband and a father, for example, a sentence about him would be a loving husband and father. Okay? So that was the table. Now let's go to exercise D. Study the words below from the lecture. Okay, so you guys heard these words in the lecture. Did you understand them in the correct context? Because if I say a soft toy here, it just means it's a soft toy, nothing else, right? A teddy bear, for example, right? But in the context, what a soft toy means is that it's a part of a tradition that people use, or that people like people send soft toys, or one toy, it really depends, doesn't matter, to the family expecting a baby, right? The bride is the woman that is gonna get married on the wedding day, right? The best man is someone that the groom chooses, and he stands right behind him and usually holds the rings. And finally, we have a gravestone. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what a gravestone is. It's that stone that has, again, like I said, a sentence about you on it and indicates that this is your grave. Okay? So now let's talk a little bit. Let's have a quick discussion. So do you have the same customs in your culture? So based on your culture, do you have the same customs as the UK? Obviously, not all of us are going to have the same customs and traditions, so I'd like you to write me in the comments below. What do you think? Do you have what are your customs? And if yours are too different, obviously let me know. Okay? Now let's go to exercise F. Look at the sentences below. Let me open this. So here we have complete each sentence with a word from the box. So we have birth, marriage, and death. Okay? So now let's have a listen at this audio and write the correct ones down. Here we go.
86. Exercise F2. Listen and check.
A.
Cuba has a very high marriage rate at 17.7 per 1,000 people.
B.
Africa is the continent with the highest death rate at 14 per 1,000 people.
C.
The birth rate in North America is 14 per 1,000 people, while in South America it is 21.5.
Alright, so here we have number 1. Cuba has a very high dash rate at 17.7 per 1,000 people, and that was marriage, okay? So Cuba has a very high marriage rate at 17.7 per 1,000 people. Then we have B. Africa is the continent with the highest dash rate at 14 per 1,000 people. And we'll say death rate. Okay, so Africa is the continent with the highest death rate at 14 per 1,000 people. And then we have C. The dash rate in North America is 14 per 1,000 people, while in South America it is 21.5. Obviously, the birth rate in North America is 14 per 1,000 people, while in South America it is 21.5. And we'll actually dive into more detail now about the different marriage, death, and birth rates in different countries. So here we have exercise G. Look at table 1. Let me have a look here. We have listen and write numbers in the box. Okay, so we have countries and we have the marriage rates around the world, obviously per 1,000 people. Okay, so you're gonna hear the audio now. Okay, and you'll hear different numbers for different countries. Make sure you write them down. I'll be writing them down as we go as well. Okay, here, have a listen.
87. Exercise G1. Listen and write numbers in the boxes.
Marriage is a very popular institution all over the world, but there are significant differences in marriage rates. For example, while Cuba has one of the highest rates at 17.7 per 1,000 people, Argentina has a rate of just 3.9. 3.9 is in fact the world's lowest marriage rate. The Philippines is a country that also has a very high rate. It's close behind Cuba with a rate of 14.2. In many countries in Western Europe, people seem less enthusiastic about getting married. The UK has a marriage rate of 5.9, while France has one of the lowest rates at 4.4. A number of countries have a rate around 10. Bangladesh has 10.7. Egypt has 9.2. And the USA has 8.9. Syria has a slightly lower rate of 8.6. The world's most populated country, China, has a marriage rate of 7.7.
Okay, so based on the audio that we just heard, we have the different marriage rates around the world per 1,000 people. So we have Cuba 17.7, Philippines 14.2, Bangladesh 10.7, and obviously what I'm doing here is I'm pronouncing the words with the decimal point, and I'll explain why in a second. Here we have Egypt 9.2, the USA 8.9, Syria 8.6, China 7.7, the UK 5.9, France 4.4, and Argentina 3.9. Okay, now let's move on. Here we have exercise H, and I'll actually get to this in a second. I won't do it now. I'll just read it so you keep it in the back of your head. So study table 2. The information is not in order. Which continent do you think has... Here we have some questions. So which continent do you think has the highest birth rate, the highest death rate, the fastest population growth rate, the lowest birth rate, the lowest death rate, and the lowest population growth rate? Okay? So now let me take a look here at exercise I. Like I said, I'll get back to exercise F in a second. So we have listen and write numbers in the boxes. Okay, so now we're going to write the birth rates and death rates. Remember, the rates before were about marriage. Now we're going to be talking about birth rates and death rates. Okay? So again, per 1,000 people. So here we go.
88. Exercise I1. Listen and write numbers in the boxes.
There are significant differences between birth rate and death rate in different continents. Africa has the highest birth rate at 39 births per 1,000 people, but also has the highest death rate, 14 per 1,000 people. Europe has the lowest birth rate at 10.5 per 1,000, but a fairly high death rate too, at 12. So why does Europe have a high death rate? Well, it's because Europe has an aging population. That means a lot of people are old. Nearly 20% of people in Europe are over 65 years old. There are big differences in the birth rate in the Americas. In North America, the birth rate is 14, while in South America, it's 21.5. The death rates are very similar, however. North America has a death rate of 8.5, and South America 7.5. In Asia, the birth rate is 20.5, so slightly below the rate in South America. In Australasia, the birth rate is a little lower at 18. At 8 per 1,000, Asia and Australasia have the same death rate.
So I didn't quite catch that, the last one. I think it was 1.25 actually. Yeah, so 1.25, right? Or not 1.25, I'm making stuff up. It was around 8 because Australasia and Asia have the exact same death rate, so 8. Let me get that one last time so I can make sure.
At 18. At 8 per 1,000.
Yep, so at 8 per 1,000. Always got to be careful with these audios, man. Okay, so now that we have the birth rates and death rates by continent per 1,000 people, we'll talk about the difference as well in a little bit. So we have 39, 14, 10.5, and 12. You get the idea. So now, let's take a look at skills check 2 here. So hearing numbers with decimals. So you got to study the pronunciation of the decimal number below. So here we have 2.5. You see how I pronounce it? Really simple. 2, a point, and 5. This point is also known as the decimal point. However, in fast speech, some of the consonant sounds are not pronounced. Here you'll see what I'm talking about, and that is why I was pronouncing the marriage rates above. So if I say 8.3, you'll quickly see that the T in 8 and point are both not pronounced. I say it quickly, so you might think that I'm not pronouncing it, but it's just fast speech. Okay, so 8.3, no T's whatsoever. Okay, so 8.3. Okay, so that is how some consonant sounds are dropped when in fast speech. Okay, so 2.1, that is if I'm speaking normally, but if I'm speaking quickly, I'll say 2.1. 2.1. I won't pronounce the T. Okay, just something to keep to look out for. Now let's take a look at exercise J. Look at table 2. Here we have okay, so here we have the birth rates and the death rates by continent. We literally just talked about this. Okay, so let's check for these 2 questions here. Here we have which continents have a rising population and which continents have a falling population. Here we go. Have a look.
89. Exercise J3. Listen and check.
The world's population is growing simply because the birth rate is higher than the death rate. Overall, the world birth rate is 22, and the death rate is 9. The difference, then, is 22 minus 9, which is 13 per 1,000 people, or 1.3%. There are significant differences, however, between the growth rates in different continents. In Africa, for example, the difference between the birth rate and death rate is 23, whereas in Europe it's minus 1.5. We can see then that the population of Europe isn't rising at all. It's actually falling.
Okay, so based on what we just heard, we know that Africa is the only continent basically that has, or not, it has the most amount of birth rate. It has the biggest birth rate, right? But there are other continents that have a rising population. So what does a rising population mean exactly? A rising population is obviously a population that is simply rising because the births or the birth rate is more than the death rate, right? So we know that the birth rate in Africa is 39 and the death rate in Africa is 14. So that means more birth, less death. That means rising, okay? So we'll say the difference between the two is around 23. You just minus them. It's not rocket science. And for interpretation, we'll say it's rising, okay? So we'll say Africa, right? What else? we have North America, okay? Birth rate of around 14 and 8.5. Minus the 2, you get 0.5. Let me write that down. Okay? So you get 14, 8.5, you get 0.5 as a difference. And again, it's rising. So we'll say, let me write that down. We'll say North America. Okay? I think all of these are actually rising except for Europe. Europe is actually falling. Okay? Let's take a look at South America. So we have 21.5, 7.5, so the difference will be around 1.4. Yeah. So 1.4, and again, it's rising. So we'll write that down as well. We'll say South America. Okay? What else do we have? We have Asia. Okay, this one's also rising. So we have the birth rate 20.5, and the death rate is around 8. So the difference will be around, yeah, it's 1.25. Okay, so rising. So we'll say Asia. Okay, let me write that down in capital. Asia. And we have Australasia, or Australia. We have birth rate 18, and the death rate is around 8, so around difference of 1. Okay, again, rising. So we'll say and Australia. And why did it not write the A down? 1 second. And Australia. Okay. Now, what about the continents that have a falling population? And from what we just heard, we know that there's only one continent that has a falling population rate, and that is Europe. So 10.5 and 12, that gives us minus 1.5 as a difference, okay? So that is obviously a falling population rate. So we'll say Europe, okay? So continents that have a rising population, we have Africa, North America, South America, Asia, and Australia. But for continents that have a falling population, it's only one, and it's Europe. Okay? That was exercise J. Now let me go back to exercise H. Here we have study table 2. The information is not in order. Which continent do you think has the highest birth rate? So take a look at table 2. We solved it, so you should know this. The highest birth rate. Just take a look at the birth column, and the highest one will be your highest continent, birth rate for your continent. So we have Africa, obviously, has a 39 death rate, so that's the highest birth rate. Okay, so Africa. The highest death rate, also Africa, coming in at 14. Okay, then we have the fastest population growth rate. What do you guys think? That's correct. Take a look at the difference. Okay, so if the difference is high, then that means that that's going to be a fast population growth rate. Obviously, if the birth rate is more than the death rate and not the opposite. So for that, we'll also say Africa. I think the difference was around 23. Okay, and then we have the lowest birth rate, and that is Europe, coming in at 10.5. Then we have the lowest death rate. I think it was actually the lowest death rate was South America, coming in at around 7.5. So South America has the lowest death rate. Then we have number 6, the lowest population growth rate. Okay, so there's 2 answers to this question. So we have the lowest population growth rate. We can say that North America, because it's only rising at 0.5% difference. Or we could say the continent that doesn't even have a growth rate, and that's Europe, so minus 1.5. Okay? So that was exercise H. Now let's take a look at the final exercise here, K. Do you know the birth, death, and marriage rates in your country? So talk to me a little bit. What do you know about the birth, death, and marriage rates in your country? If not, you can always have a Google search, take a look, and write them down, right? It's a good thing to know about your country's birth, death, and different marriage rates in your country, and you can even compare them with other information about your classmates. Okay, so that was listening, you guys. Now let's move on to speaking. Alright, what is up, you guys, and welcome back to the 98 English course. In today's recording, we're going to be going over lesson 2, speaking. So let's dive right in. Here we have 3 pictures, right? They're all life events. So what is exactly happening, you guys, in each picture? What do you guys think? So I think picture A has some sort of death tone to it, right? Maybe it's a celebration, maybe it's to mourn dead people. We'll see later on. And for picture B, we can see a wedding, a certain traditional wedding in, I think, an Asian country, right? And for C, I think we have a newborn in maybe India. We'll see that as well. Okay, so let's go to exercise B. Listen to part of a tutorial. Which event above are they talking about? Okay, so we're gonna listen to a tutorial, and there's a certain event of these 3 that we're gonna hear about, okay? And make sure that you open your ears for these words. So you're gonna hear celebration, customs, graveyards, parades, popular prayers, relatives, etc. Okay, so keep in mind these words, and let me actually open this. It was costumes, actually, not customs. Okay, here, have a listen.
90. Lesson 2. Speaking. Exercise B. Listen to part of a tutorial. Which event above are they talking about?
I researched a festival. It's called the Day of the Dead.
Is it a funeral?
No, not really. It's a day to remember dead friends and relatives.
Does it happen every year?
Yes, that's right. It's on the 1st and 2nd of November.
Where does it happen?
In Mexico, certainly. But I think it happens in Nicaragua and so on.
Is it popular?
Yes, very popular.
What happens exactly?
People visit graves and say prayers. They tell stories. They sing and they dance. They go to the graveyards. They often take the favourite food and drink of the dead person. They take toys for dead children.
So is it a celebration?
Yes, exactly. It's a day to be happy. There are parades through the streets. People wear costumes or carry figures of dead people.
When did the custom start?
I understand that it started hundreds of years ago, at the time of the Aztecs.
Okay, so based on the audio that we just heard, we know that it's a festival and it's called the Day of the Dead. It's not a funeral, so get that out of the way, okay? It's a day to remember dead friends and relatives, okay? And does it happen every year, you guys? Yes, it does, okay? And when is it on? It's on the 1st and 2nd of November, okay? And where does it usually happen? I think he said something along the lines of Mexico and Nicaragua, okay? And it's pretty popular there in Mexico and Nicaragua, okay? And for the festival, people usually visit graves and their loved ones' graves and say prayers, right? They can also say tell stories. They sing and they dance. And when they go to the graveyards, they often take the favorite food and drink of the dead person, okay? So it's basically a celebration, okay? Not really, but you get the idea, okay? Now let's go to exercise C, study the words in the box. So I hope you guys were able to catch these words, because now we're actually going to complete the audio in a text form. So did you hear them in the tutorial? I personally did. Did you understand from the context? And we talked about the context before, okay? It's the words before and after the word that you don't know the meaning of, okay? Look at this extract from the tutorial. Write a word from the box in each space, okay? So these words are gonna go to each space, okay? So here we have this one. I researched dash. It's called the Day of the Dead. What do you guys think? That's correct. A festival. Let me write that down. Festival. Okay, so I researched a festival. It's called the Day of the Dead. Is it a funeral? No, not really. It's a day to remember dead friends. And where do we have? We have relatives. Yes, so relatives. Okay, let me get rid of that extra T. Relatives. Okay, does it happen every year? Yes, that's right. It's on the 1st and 2nd of November. Where does it happen? In Mexico, certainly, but I think it happens in Nicaragua and so on. Okay, is it, what are the words? We could say popular. So is it popular? Popular. Yes, very popular. Okay, what happens exactly? We'll say people visit. What do we have? We'll say graves. So people visit graves and say, this one I know, so prayers. I know this one. And say prayers. They tell stories. They sing and they dance, right? They dance. They go to the, do we have graveyards? Yes, we do. So, okay, so they go to the graveyards. They often take the favorite food and drink of the dead person. They take toys for dead children. So is it a, what was it, celebration? Yes, celebration. So is it a celebration, as in a question? Okay, so is it a celebration? Yes, exactly. It's a day to be happy. There are parades. Do we have parades? Parades, yes. So there are parades through the streets. People wear, what do people wear? Costumes, yes. So costumes, or carry figures of dead people. When did the custom start? I understand that it started hundreds of years ago at the time of the Aztecs. Okay, so now let's listen to the tutorial again and let's check our answers. Here you go, have a listen.
91. Exercise C3. Listen to the tutorial again and check your answers.
I researched a festival. It's called the Day of the Dead.
Is it a funeral?
No, not really. It's a day to remember dead friends and relatives.
Does it happen every year?
Yes, that's right. It's on the 1st and 2nd of November.
Where does it happen?
In Mexico, certainly. But I think it happens in Nicaragua and so on.
Is it popular?
Yes, very popular.
What happens exactly?
People visit graves and say prayers. They tell stories. They sing and they dance. They go to the graveyards. They often take the favourite food and drink of the dead person. They take toys for dead children.
So is it a celebration?
Yes, exactly. It's a day to be happy. There are parades through the streets. People wear costumes or carry figures of dead people.
When did the custom start?
I understand that it started hundreds of years ago, at the time of the Aztecs.
So we got all of them correctly. Now let's move on to exercise D. Yeah, okay, so let's go to D. Study the correct questions. So before we do that, let's just take a quick revision about questions and the different types of questions. So when we have yes or no questions, okay, and you guys know questions that are answered using a simple yes or no, right? So if I say, is it popular? Are they happy? Does it happen in the USA? Do people dance? I can answer all these questions by saying yes or no. Okay, so these are called yes or no questions. And 2, we have information questions, and information questions usually start with question words. What are question words? We talked about this before. Where, when, does, where, when, how, why. Okay, so where does it happen? When did it start? How did it happen? Etc. Okay, and you gotta remember, so when I say what, I'm not gonna use does with it. Okay, if it's a question, now I'll just add an S. So what happens instead of saying what does happen. What does happen is wrong. Okay, so now let me open exercise D for you guys. Let's take a look here. We have study the questions and correct each question. Okay, so there's a problem with each question here. Let's take a look at A. It is a funeral and we have a question mark. This would be okay if it was a normal sentence, but it's not. It's a question. So what do you guys think the problem is? That's correct. The verb is not where it's supposed to be, right? So verb to be is supposed to be in the beginning. So we'll say, is it a funeral? Now that's a question. Makes more sense. It's a yes or no question. Does it happens every year? What do you guys think the problem is? That's correct. I have no reason whatsoever to add an S to happens, right? It's a question. Why would I do that? So, does it happen every year? Okay. Then we have C. What does happen exactly? What do you guys think? We literally just said this. That's correct. Does not belong here. So we'll get rid of does, right? We're not done yet. We'll add an S to happens. So what happens exactly? All right? Then we have D. Are they a celebration? Okay, so they here is wrong. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about a celebration. Okay? A celebration is not people. That's a fact. So we'll say not are they. We'll say is it a celebration, right? Because there's no are with one celebration, right? And obviously they is for plural and people, so I can't use that. So is it a celebration? E. When started the custom? What do you guys think? Started is wrong. We'll add a did. So I'll say when did the custom, and I'm not done. I'll say start. Okay? So when did the custom start? Instead of saying when started the custom. When did the custom start? Okay? And finally we have F. Is popular. We're just missing an it here. So is it popular? And that's it. Okay? So we were missing an it. Is it popular? Alright? So listen and check your ideas. Now let's check our answers.
92. Exercise D2. Listen and check your ideas.
A,
Is it a funeral?
B,
Does it happen every year?
C,
What happens exactly?
D,
Is it a celebration?
E,
When did the custom start?
F.
Is it popular?
Okay, so that was the audio. We got all of these questions right. Now let's move on. Here we have exercise E, but before we do that, let's hop to skills check 2. We have the word actually. So when do we use actually? We use actually to correct someone politely, right? If you want to correct someone has said something wrong, and you want to correct them, but you don't want to sound like a jerk, you're going to use actually, okay? So we can put it at the beginning or the end of a sentence. So for example, let's say someone has said to me that Mexico is in South America, and I know that that's not true. So if I want to correct him politely, obviously, this is what I'll say. I can say, actually, Mexico's in Central America, not South America, right? I can also use actually at the end of the sentence. So Mexico's in Central America, actually, okay? But I prefer the actually used in the beginning. I don't know, I think this one seems more polite, but it's whatever, both are correct. Okay, so you can use actually in the beginning of a sentence or at the end to correct someone politely. Okay, so now here we have studied the sentences and phrases. I'm pretty sure you guys have an idea on how to complete these. Okay, so we're gonna add one word to each phrase, right? So if I say no, not, and dash, and we'll check our ideas, I just want you guys to think for a second, right? So, no, not, dash, yes, that's, dash. Okay, so all of these are phrases that we really use on our day-to-day basis. So what do you guys think A is? So I can say no, not, that's correct, really. If I say really, no, not really, right? It's a phrase that we use on the daily. And we have B, yes, that's right. Right? You see? So yes, that's right. And we have C, in Mexico, okay, we just heard this in the audio, by the way. So in Mexico, certainly, yes, certainly. Okay? So certainly. And then we have D, yes, dash popular. Very popular, right? And then we have E, what happens exactly? I'm asking a question. What happens exactly? Then we have F, I dash that it started hundreds of years ago. And for that I'll say I understand that it started hundreds of years ago. Okay, let's listen and check our ideas.
93. Exercise E2. Listen and check your ideas.
A,
No, not really.
B,
Yes, that's right.
C,
In Mexico, certainly.
D,
Yes, very popular.
E,
What happens exactly?
F,
I understand that it started hundreds of years ago.
Okay, so we got all of them right. Now let's see what else do we have. Okay, so here we have skills check 3, doing research, and I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with how to do research, so this will kind of just refresh your memory. So you often have to do research for a tutorial, right? So when doing a research for anything, not just a tutorial by the way, you gotta make sure that you can answer all the key questions about your research. And most key questions start with what, you guys guessed it, most start with a question word. So your whose, where, when, what, how much, how many, and why. All of these are questions that need to be answered. A part of research is also looking up any new words in a dictionary. So you gotta make sure that when doing research, you know the meanings of new words and can actually pronounce the words. So if you ever have to present your research, you can actually pronounce the words and know the meanings if someone asks you about your research, okay? Let's take a quick look at exercise F here. You're going to take part in a tutorial, right? So if you're on your own, you can look at both notes. If you're with a classmate or some friends, you guys can divide into groups. Okay, so do the research about obviously the different notes if you're one person, and each group can take a note and do a research on it. Okay, so for example, we have notes B, we have birth customs in Muslim countries. Okay, you can do your own research about birth customs in different Muslim countries, or just Muslim countries in general, right? And the other group, or you on your own, you could do research about wedding customs in India, right? And how many days, you know, your who, where, when, all of these questions need to be answered. So use skills check 3 as a guiding point to do your research. Okay, so that was speaking, you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Alright, what is up everybody, and welcome back to the 98 English course. In today's recording we're going to be going over lesson 3, vocab and pronunciation. So let's hop right in. Here we have 8 pictures, right? Let me actually open exercise A so you guys can get a better look. In these 8 pictures we have different life situations, obviously, and here we have some words in this box. So we have a cake, a costume, a honeymoon, a parade, a present, candles, fireworks, a speech, and anniversary. Okay, so we want to find these items in the photographs, and keep in mind that you can find some of these items in multiple photographs. So for example, here you have a cake. You can see a cake in photograph B, photograph D, photograph A, so 3 photographs. Okay, so let's have a listen, and I'll be hovering over the correct one as we go.
94. Lesson 3. Vocabulary and Pronunciation. Exercise A3. Listen and check your answers.
A cake. A costume. A honeymoon. A parade. A present. Candles. Fireworks. A speech. An anniversary.
Okay, so that was a quick way to start our lesson. Now let's go to exercise B. Here we have match each verb below with one of the noun phrases in the box. Okay, so put the noun phrase after the verb. So here we have some nouns and we're going to put them after some of the verbs that we have here. So let's go to A. So take part in, what do you guys think? Take part in a cake? Nope. Take part in a present? Take part in a speech perhaps? I don't think that works too. So we'll say take part in a parade. I'm pretty sure you guys know what a parade means, right? When people parade the streets. B, cut. What do you guys think? Cut a speech? Cut honeymoon? No, it's cut a cake. Okay, so cut a cake. Then we have C, go on. What do you guys think? I'll say go on a honeymoon. Okay? Then we have wear. Wear. I don't wear a present, right? I don't wear fireworks, so I'll say wear a costume. Okay? Then we have E, blow out candles, or a candle in this case, so blow out a candle. And then we have F, give a present. You could also give a speech, by the way. These are all correct. But in this case, we have watch and make, so these make more sense. So make a speech, right? Or actually, it's the opposite. So we'll have make a present and give a speech. And we have watch fireworks. Okay, let me check with the whole give and make. Let's listen and check our answers.
95. Exercise B2. Listen and check.
A.
Take part in a parade.
B.
Cut a cake.
C.
Go on honeymoon.
D.
Wear a costume.
E.
Blow out candles.
F.
Give a present.
Okay, so it is give a present. Okay, that's my bad. So we have give a present and make a speech. Okay?
G.
Watch fireworks.
H.
Make a speech.
Alright, so we got most of them correct, except for that one that I was confused with, but that's okay. Now let's move on to exercise C. Here we have ask and answer questions about customs in your country. Okay, so let me get a better view here. So we have ask and answer questions about customs in your country. Use the information to make questions. So here we have some information and we're going to add them together to make an understandable question. So we have A, children blow out candles / birthday parties. So how will I go about saying this, you guys? I can say, do children blow out candles at birthday parties? And question mark. Okay, so children blow out candles, birthday parties. Do children blow out candles at birthday parties? Right? Then we have B, bride, groom, cut, cake, together. So we can say, do excuse me, do the bride and the groom cut the cake together? Question mark. Do the bride and groom cut the cake together? Okay. Then we have C, people, fireworks, New Year. So I'll say again, do people have fireworks? Oh, fireworks. Do people have fireworks at New Year? Let me have a space here and question mark. Okay, so do people have fireworks at New Year? Okay, and we have D, when people parades. I think we can use a question word here. We can say when, right? Do people take part in parades? Right, you guys? So when do people take part in parades? And then we have E, when people costume. So we have, we can say when do people wear costumes, right? Question mark. And then we have F, what presents give bride and groom? So we'll say what presents, right? So what presents do people give to the bride and groom? Question mark. Okay. Excuse me. And then we have G, where people honeymoon. We can say where do people go on honeymoon? Question mark. Okay. Then we have H, who, speech, and wedding. We can say who. Oh, that's my bad. Who gives a speech at a wedding? Question mark. Okay. And finally, we have I, when celebrate anniversary. And for that, we can say when do people celebrate an anniversary, right? So now that we got all of these done, let's check our answers.
96. Exercise C2. Listen and repeat the questions. A. Do children blow out candles at birthday parties? B. Do the bride and the groom cut the cake together? C. Do people have fireworks at New Year? D. When do people take part in parades? E. When do people wear costumes? F. What presents do people give to the bride and groom? G. Where do people go on honeymoon? H. Who gives a speech at a wedding? I. When do people celebrate an anniversary?
Alright, so we got all of our answers right. So now let's move on to exercise D. Right, and this one's important and interesting. You guys will enjoy this one. So here we have, look at the green box. How do you pronounce the letter C in each word? So here we have culture, civilization, custom, called, costume, ceremony, celebrate, and close or close, depending on how you use it. So if it's a verb or if it's an adjective. Okay? So what do you guys see? Or what do you guys hear? Obviously, different words have different pronunciations, right? So culture, it's pronounced, the C is pronounced as a K, right? Culture. But the word civilization is pronounced with a C. How do I differentiate between the two? How do I know when to say C and when to say K, right? That's what we're going to be talking about. So when is the C hard and when is it soft? So hard or soft C depends on the vowel that follows. So if the letter C meets the letters A, O, or U, it sounds hard, like a K, right? So culture, costume, Catholic, okay, cubit, clap, car, cat, okay, cut, you get the idea. But if C meets the letter E, I, or Y, it sounds soft, right? Like cemetery, like circus, okay, like celebrate, like ceremony, okay? All of these are examples of a soft C. Now let's take a look at skills check. This is what I just said. So we pronounce C as a hard sound, aka that K sound, before A, O, and U. We pronounce it as a soft sound before E and I added Y, totally fine as well. And it also makes a hard sound in front of consonants, okay? So again, that K sound before A, O, and U, right? And also in front of consonants. And C makes a soft sound before E and I and Y, okay? So here we have some examples: cat, car, cost, cut, celebrate, city, close, and cross, okay? So now, how do you pronounce the words in the blue box? Listen and check. Let's actually just let me open this so you guys can get a better view. So here we have Catholic, cemetery, circus, confetti, cupid, create, and clap. Okay? So I'm going to play these two again just for your pronunciation check, and then we'll move on. Here you go. Have a listen.
97. Exercise D2. Listen and check. Culture. Civilization. Custom. Called. Costume. Ceremony. Celebrate. Close.
Okay, so that was the green box. Now let's go to the blue box.
98. Exercise D5. Listen and check.
Catholic. Cemetery. Circus. Confetti. Cupid. Create. Clap.
Okay, so now let's move on. Let's go to exercise E, saying vowels. Let me open this. So here we have, is the vowel the same or different in each pair of words? So say the words and write if it's S, same, or D, different. So for A, we say weigh and rate. What do you guys think? I'm talking about the vowel, by the way. Okay? So weigh and rate. Weigh and rate. Yes, that's the same. So we'll say S. Okay? And then we have B, death and guest. Death and guest. Okay? Do you guys get the correlation? Death and guest. Again, same. Okay? You gotta focus on the vowel and not the whole word. Okay? So the E here sounds exactly like the E here. So death and guest. Okay? bride and dies. Bride and dies. Again, same, because I and I sounds exactly the same. Here we have grave and prayer. Grave and prayer. And you'll see that this is actually different. Why? Because I didn't pronounce the E in grave, but I did in prayer. Okay? And we have E, born, groom. Born, groom. Again, different. The O is pronounced differently. Then we have birth and church. Birth and church. Birth and church. Okay? And for that one, it's the same. Okay? So, although it's a different vowel, right? It has that same sound. So, that's what I'm trying to say. So, birth and church. It even rhymes. Okay? So, let's listen and check our answers.
99. Exercise E2. Listen and check.
A. Way. Rate. B. Death. Guest. C. Bride. Dies. D. Grave. Prayer. E. Born. Groom. F. Birth. Church.
Alright, so that was the words. Now let's move on. What do we have here? We have look at the conversations. So you're going to casually listen to a conversation, and I want you guys, if you're in pairs, again, you guys know the drill. If you're in pairs, practice the conversation, use a similar tone, check the stress and intonation, right? If you're on your own, do it in front of a mirror or open your recorder on your phone. So, here, have a listen.
100. Exercise F1. Listen to the conversations.
Conversation 1.
When were you born?
In 1991.
So you're 20?
Actually, I'm 21.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
When did you get married?
In 2010.
Do you have any children?
Yes, a baby boy.
When was he born?
In January.
Conversation 2.
What does your father do?
He's dead, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
When did he die?
In 2009.
How old was he?
He was 63.
What happened?
He had a heart attack.
Oh wow, I did not expect that. Okay, so now that we got the conversations, I hope you were able to understand the tone and the stress. We talked about how important that is when speaking and talking in general, okay? So like I said, I want you guys to practice the conversations either in pairs or do it on your own, okay? So that was vocab and pronunciation. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Alright, what is up you guys, and welcome back to the 98 English course. In today's recording, we're going to be going over lesson 4 reading. So let's hop right in. Here we have, read the introduction to the text opposite and choose the correct heading below and write it in the space at the top of the text. Okay, so based on the introduction of the text, we're going to have to choose the correct heading from the 4 choices below. So we have, when will I get married? How long will I live for? How many children will I have? And will I ever be rich? Okay, so let's read the introduction. Everyone wonders about this from time to time, but there is no answer for each individual person. However, the World Health Organization has figures for average life expectancy from the earliest times. So, based on the introduction that we just read, you guys, what do you think? What's the correct heading? That's correct. We'll choose B. How long will I live for? So let's write that down. So how long will I, let me write that in capital, live for? And question mark. Okay? So how long will I live for is the correct heading. let's move on. So we have B. Look at table 1 on the opposite page. Predict the average age of death for each period in history. Okay, we're gonna have to read the whole text first, so I'll get back to this. Okay, let's go to C. Follow the reading steps. Read the first paragraph and answer the questions below. Okay, so now we have some questions about the text, so we're gonna have to read it. Let me go back here so you guys can get a better view. Okay, so I'm going to start reading and we'll solve the questions right after. Everyone wonders about this from time to time, but there is no answer for each individual person. However, the World Health Organization has figures for average life expectancy from the earliest times. Thousands of years ago, in prehistory, there were many dangers and people only lived for about 20 years. The ancient Egyptians, in around 3000 before Common Era, had an average life expectancy of 25. Although they knew a lot about medicine, the ancient Greeks only lived for an extra 3 years. In around 0 Common Era, at the time of the Roman Empire, people died at 28 on average. In the Middle Ages, around 1400 Common Era, a wider variety of food was available and the average age at death increased to 33. The average continued to rise over the next 200 years. In the Renaissance, at the time of the Michelangelo, most people lived until they were 37. During the Victorian Age, from around 1850 Common Era, doctors began to save many more children at birth and life expectancy rose to 45. By the beginning of the 20th century, average life expectancy was 50. But soon it started to rise quickly. The reason was cleaner houses, cleaner water, and a better diet. By 1950 Common Era, the average age of death was 65. Thanks to further medical advances, particularly the use of antibiotics, life expectancy continued to rise. At the start of the 21st century, it was 79. What about the future? Life expectancy is still rising, but not as quickly as in the 20th century. By 2050 Common Era, scientists predict that it will be 85. But it will take another 500 years to get to that magic age of 100. Right, so that was the text, you guys. Now let's go back and check the questions. So here we have, read the first paragraph and answer the questions below. What kind of dangers do you think there were in prehistoric times? Okay, so we talked a little bit about prehistory in paragraph 1. What do you guys think are the kind of dangers that were in prehistoric times? I mean, we can say, so we'll say wild animals, right? Probably accidents hunting, fights with other groups of people. I mean, we have war today, so it's no surprise there were a lot of fights back then as well. And this one's big, no medicine. So we didn't have antibiotics for when we got a common cold, or if we got an infection, you were basically guaranteed to die. Like, if you got an infection, that was it. Game over. Okay? So, these are some of the dangers that were in the prehistoric times. Which two great civilizations had the same life expectancy? And for that, I just read this. It's the ancient Greeks and the Roman Empire, okay? They're both great civilizations and they had the same life expectancy, okay? Now let's go to the second paragraph. What affected life expectancy during the Middle Ages? Let's go to the second paragraph. I think it was something along the lines of a wider variety of food. Right, so now it's not the same food, more nutrients. Here we have it, a wider variety of food was available. Okay? And then we have paragraph 3 to 5, or paragraphs 3 to 5. Why did life expectancy improve in the Victorian age? Why do you guys think life expectancy improved in the Victorian age? And for that, we'll say because fewer babies died. Right? Doctors started saving babies during childbirth, so again, the life expectancy rose to 45. Okay, so fewer babies dying. Then we have, why did life expectancy improve from 1900 Common Era to 1950 Common Era? And for that, we'll say, I think it was something along the lines of cleaner houses, cleaner water, and overall a better diet. Okay, here we have it. Cleaner houses, cleaner water, and a better diet. Okay? What else do we have? And then we have from 1950 to 2000 Common Era. Obviously, we had, this one's simple, we had medical advances, antibiotics, very important. So we'll say medical advances, particularly antibiotics, which helped us as humans, you know, continue to rise our life expectancy. Okay? So that was the first three. Now I want to ask you a question and tell me what you think based on your opinion. So, when will the average life expectancy be 100? So, you know, scientists, they predict that, you know, it'll take another 500 years to get to the magic age of 100, right? And they say that by 2050, it'll be around 85. But I don't know if I believe that. I mean, 500 years is a lot of time. And with the technological and medical advancements that we see on a 5-year basis, I really do believe that we can get to the, you know, that age of 100 a lot sooner than we think. Maybe not so soon, like maybe not by 250. I mean, that's way too soon. But I think like in 200 years, 250 years, we'd be able to, you know, you'd be able to go into a store and buy a pair of lungs, for example, or buy a kidney. I mean, we already do those surgeries. We just have to find a market and people willing to donate. And you get the idea. It's a big topic, right? So that's just my take on it. I'd really like to know what you think down below. Okay? So now we have D. Complete the information in Table 1. Okay, so let's go to Table 1 here. Let me actually open this. Exercise D. Here we have Table 1. We have a table, right? We have the period, so prehistory, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, etc. Then we have the year, okay, and the average lifespan, okay? So in prehistory, we know that around 5,000 before Common Era, the average lifespan was 20, okay? And then we have ancient Egypt, around 3,000 before Common Era, and based on the text, it was around 25. Okay, so life expectancy was around 25 years old. Then we have ancient Greece, 1,000 before Common Era. It was around 28. Yeah, so 28, just slightly higher. Then we have the Roman Empire at 0 Common Era. It was also 28. Okay, then we have the Middle Ages, 1400 Common Era, it was 33 years old. Then we have the Renaissance, 1600 Common Era, let me check, it was 37, yes, it was 37 years old. And then we have the Victorian Age, around 1850 Common Era, it went up to around 45. And finally, or not finally, moving on, we have the start of the 20th century, around 1900 Common Era, it went up to 50. Okay, and then we have the middle of the 20th century, around 1950 Common Era, and went up to 65. And then during the start of the 21st century, around 2000 Common Era, it went up to 79 years old. And this is just a prediction, by the way. By the middle of the 21st century, so around 2050 Common Era, it is expected to go up to 85 years old. Okay? So that was the table. What else do we have? Here we have complete the line graph. Okay, so I'll just give you a brief idea of what this is. The graph, by the way. So here we have the numbers. Obviously these are age numbers, life expectancy numbers, right? And here we have the years. So over the not years, I'd say time periods. Okay, so how do we go about this? We're obviously going to start from 20 because 20 is the absolute, I'd say, lowest possible life expectancy. It was the prehistoric times, right? So around 20, right? And as you go, you'll continue to move a little bit upwards, so around to 25, and then to 28, right? And then to 30. But keep in mind the numbers here, right? Based on the numbers, it'll tell you the time. So 5,000, I know that that's the prehistoric times, right? And then 3,000, what was it? Was it the yeah, it was the ancient ancient Egypt, right? And as you go a little bit higher, right? And as technological advancements and, you know, medicine advances, we go upwards until around 250, where we're going to be something along, yeah, around here. Okay? So that was just a brief look at this figure or graph. Okay? So now let me just give you a brief idea about this skills check. So here we have understanding commas, and I think you guys have a pretty good idea of what a comma is. So when I use a single comma, I'm usually joining two pieces of information in the same sentence, right? So two pieces of information, how do I join them together? I'll add a comma instead of just cutting it with a full stop, okay? But what if I use two commas, right? If I use two commas, I'm usually giving extra information about the subject itself or the object, okay? Now, if you ignore the information in the two commas, you'll still understand the text. So it's not necessary, it's just extra, like anything else, okay? So if you find yourself ignoring some of the commas, right, if it's two commas, you'll still understand the text. But if you skip a piece of information in the same sentence, it might not make sense. So you get the idea? We use a single comma to join two pieces of information in the same sentence, and two commas to give information about, you know, the subject or the object of the sentence. Okay? And then we have prepositions. I'm sure you guys have heard of prepositions before. You know, prepositions often come before a noun or a noun phrase. Not always the case, but often happens before a noun. Excuse me, before a noun or a noun phrase. Okay? So now let's take a look at the text again and find some examples on the whole commas thing. So let's you guys can take a look at some of the commas. Here we'll say so here, take a look. If we say, although they knew a lot about medicine, the ancient Greeks only lived for an extra 3 years. That's a sentence with what? One comma, right? So if I say, although they knew a lot about medicine, that doesn't make sense if I read it alone, right? I don't know who is they, right? Who is they that knew a lot about medicine? But if I keep going, now that's the second piece of information that I needed. The ancient Greeks only lived for an extra 3 years. You guys get the idea now, right? Let's go to the next one. In around Zero Common Era, at the time of the Roman Empire, people died at 28 on average, right? If I ignore these two, right? If I say in around Zero Common Era, do I lose anything? Not really, right? But if I say at the time of the Roman Empire, people died at 28 on average, I mean, it's extra information. Cool, right? But I still understand the main text if there's no extra information. However, like I said, if it's one comma, if I say, although they knew a lot about medicine, that just doesn't make sense. Who is they? So if I keep going and say the ancient Greeks only lived for an extra 3 years, now it makes a lot more sense. Okay? So that's how you differentiate between the 2 commas and the whole 1 comma situation. Alright? So now let's kind of have just a brief discussion before we end this lesson. Here we have exercise F. Why is life expectancy rising more slowly in general? Why do you guys think that life expectancy is rising more slowly in general now? I mean, we do have a lot of technological advancements. We have antibiotics, medical advancements. Why do you guys think that shouldn't life expectancy be rising rapidly now? And I mean, I have a theory, but I don't know if it's correct or not. This is just based on my opinion and what I see on a day-to-day basis. I think that we as humans, that although we advance very quickly in what we do, we also tend to destroy things, right? So as you can clearly see on a day-to-day basis that global warming is a real thing, right? This used to be controversial, but I'm a firm believer that global warming is actually happening now, okay? So although we're advancing, we're destroying our environment on a daily basis. So how antibiotics can only do so much, right? If you keep destroying your oxygen, right, your plants, the necessities of life, how antibiotics can only do so much. Technology can only do so much before your fragile human body begins to fail, because the environment conditions are simply not what they used to be anymore. That's just my take on it. I want to know what you think, right? And what do you think life expectancy is in your country? You should do research and let me know about that. So different countries obviously have different life expectancies based on the country itself. So obviously it's basically where you were born and where you're from it's basically related to, I think it's not the country itself, but rather what the country does on a day-to-day basis. For example, diet, clean water, clean food, all of these play a major role in your life expectancy as a country or as a human. Okay? So that was reading, you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Alright, what is up, you guys, and welcome back to the 98 English course. In today's recording, we're going to be going over Lesson 5, Writing and Grammar. So let's hop right in. Here we have Exercise A. Look at the table. Let me open this so you guys can get a better look. Here we have Table 1, be born. So here we have most babies dash born. So this one's simple. We're going to add a verb to be either in present or in the past. So is, are, was, and where. So most babies dash born at home, okay, in 1984. So what do you guys think? We'll add a simple are, right? Because most and babies, plural. So most babies are born at home, okay? I, he, she, dash born in 1984. What do you guys think? Was, that's correct, because we're talking about the past here, right? So he or I or she was born in 1984, okay? And finally, we have you, we, and they. Obviously, all of these take plurals, so we'll add where in London, okay? You, we, they were in London, okay? So complete the sentence below about babies in your country and circle the correct option. Okay, so we have two options, either in a hospital or at home. Okay, so we'll say most babies, let me actually write that correctly. Most babies are born in, and you'll choose the correct option. So either a hospital or at home. We'll say in hospital. So most babies are born in a hospital. Okay? So that was exercise A. Alright, now let's go to... Okay. Actually, I think this is glitched, you guys. I'll tell you why in a second. So here we have Barack Obama and Nicole Kidman. Okay, you see the difference? Take a look. Here it's only Barack Obama. It's a little bit glitched, so I'm not gonna write until we reach number 4. Okay? So match the people with phrases. Alright. So here we have Barack Obama, Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln, Sir Isaac Newton, and we have Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe. And we have Christmas Day, Australia, and the same day in 1809 in Hawaii. Okay, so these are all pieces of information regarding these people. So now let's match these very important people to these phrases. Okay, so here we have Barack Obama. Let me actually open this and see if I can get an idea here. So it even has New Zealand instead of Australia. Yeah, so I wouldn't advise writing here. So we have Barack Obama. We'll say, I know this is just general facts, so I'll say Barack Obama, Hawaii. I'll elaborate a little bit more, but just give me a second. So A will be, I'm guessing this is 4. So Barack Obama, Hawaii. Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln. We'll say, I think they were born on the same day, so we'll say the same day in 1809. Okay? Then we have Sir Isaac Newton. I think was he born on Christmas Day? I think so. We'll check. Isaac Newton on Christmas Day. And then we have Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe. And I think they're both either, we have Australia left, so they're either Australian or born in Australia. Okay, now let me open this so I can actually write down the sentences. So write each piece of information in A3 as a full sentence. Okay, so I want you guys to scratch Nicole Kidman if you have it in your book, right? So this will only be Barack Obama. So Barack Obama was born in Hawaii. Okay? So Barack Obama was born in Hawaii. That's the first piece of information. And then we have 2. Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln, we'll say, were born on the same day. Were born on the same day in 1809. Okay? So Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were born on the same day in 1809. Then we have 3. Sir Isaac Newton was born on Christmas Day. Christmas Day. And I wrote that wrong. Let me go back. Christmas Day. Okay? So Sir Isaac Newton was born on Christmas Day. And finally, we have Russell Crowe, and now you can add Nicole Kidman. So Russell Crowe and Nicole Kidman were both born in Australia. Okay? So we have Russell Crowe and Nicole Kidman were both born in Australia. Alright, you guys? So now let's move on. What do we have? Okay, here we have exercise B. Think again about birth rates and death rates. Let me open this so you guys can get a better view. Here we have, what is happening to the population of Europe, Africa, and the United States? Okay, so based on what we've read and what we've gathered so far about, the birth rates and death rates of Europe, Africa, and the United States, what do you guys personally think is happening to the population in each of these continents? I mean, for me personally, I'd definitely say that in Europe, we know that birth rates are falling, right? The death rate's not too high. So I think it's kind of going okay, but not really. Like, they're falling. They're going, more than 20% of people in Europe are older people, right? Or people over the age of 65. So I'd say if we increase it a little bit, that wouldn't be too bad. But for now, it's falling, right? And then we have Africa, which is a really interesting continent because although it has a very high birth rate, which is a problem in itself, by the way, we also have a very high death rate. So I'd definitely say that the situation in Africa is not ideal. You don't want to have a very high birth rate and also the highest birth rate in the world, right? That's just bad. So I definitely think that the ideal state for Africa would be to lower the birth rate a little bit and try your best to lower the death rate. as much as possible, but I know that these things take time, and it just happens, you don't know what'll happen in decades from now. So now let's move on to the United States. And for me personally, again, these answers totally depend on you as a student. I'm just giving you examples. I'd say that the United States is in a pretty good place right now. I'd say that the death rate is low, which is always a good thing, by the way. And the birth rate is not too high, right? I mean, it's slowly rising, but it's very slowly rising to the point where it doesn't really make a difference, right? Yeah, you're getting new people, but at a slow, consistent rate. Instead of people in Africa being born and millions upon millions of others dying, okay? So it's not like Europe or Africa where things are either falling or rising quickly, but it's going steady, okay? Now let's look at table 2. Why do we use the present continuous in this situation? Okay, so you remember we talked about the present continuous a little bit. Let's take a look at table 2. Here we have the population of Europe is falling slightly. Or we have the population of Africa is rising quickly. Or people in the US are living longer. And why do you guys think, why do we use the present continuous in this situation right here? Do you guys know? We'll probably say to talk about changes happening around the time, because that's what's actually happened, right? What's actually happening. So the population of Europe is rising quickly, right? I'm talking about changes happening around the time. Not too far, not all the way back. It's around the time. Okay? So we'll tick B. Alright, I think that's this part right here. What else do we have? Here we have read about the birth rate in Italy, then do some research about the birth rate in your country, and write a similar paragraph about your country. Okay, so what we're going to do here is read this paragraph, right? It's about the birth rate in Italy, so obviously a country in Europe. And then we're going to do some research on our own birth rate in your country, obviously as a student. And I want you guys to write a similar paragraph to this one, okay? But after you get the idea of how this is written. So here we go. We have the population of Italy is growing very slowly. In 1986, the population was 56.5 million, and now it is 58.8 million. That is a growth of only 3.9%. The growth rate of all of Western Europe in that time was 12.4%. The birth rate now is 19.8 births per 1,000 people. The population is growing older too. 21.6% of Italians are over the age of 65. And going a little bit off topic here, that is exactly what I was talking about. You see, 21.6% in Italy, by the way, are over the age of 65 now. So, definitely falling. Now, what I want you guys to do is research about your or the birth rate in your country, right? And write a similar paragraph to this one, and let's move on. Okay? So, before we go to exercise C, here we have, where can you put the word still in the sentence below? So here we have the population is rising in most countries. And I can add still after the verb. So the population is still rising in most countries, right? So after the verb to be. The population is still rising in most countries. Okay? Now we have study table 3, and let me actually open this. Here we have the infinitive following a verb. So here we have life expectancy started thousands of years ago, and life expectancy continued in the 20th century. So what kind of word comes after the verb, you guys? What do we call that word that comes after the verb? And that is true. We call it's another verb, right? Really not that, doesn't make a difference. So we'll say another verb. Okay? And what form is it in exactly? Yeah, it's in full infinitive form, right? So we'll say, what form is it in? We'll say full infinitive form, right? So what's the kind of word that comes after the verb, another verb, and what form is it in? It's in full infinitive form. Okay? So now let's practice. Study the sentence below, then write the information in A to C as full sentence excuse me, as full sentences in the same way. So we have life expectancy started to rise in around 3000 before Common Era, or BCE, and it is still rising. So he wants us to write the information from A to C the same way as this sentence right here. So life expectancy started to rise in around 3000 BCE, and it is still rising. So for A, we'll say, well, here we have, well, let me give you the information first. We have the population of India rise 60 years old, or 60 years ago, and, okay. So we can say, the population of India started to rise 60 years ago, and then I'll add a comma, and say, and it is still rising, right? So again, the population of India started to rise 60 years ago, comma, and it is still rising. Okay? Now let's go to B. Here we have the child death rate, UK, fall, 1900, and. Okay. So we'll say the child death rate in the UK started to fall in the 90s, or not 90s, in 1900s, and is still falling, right? So again, the child death rate in the UK started to fall in the 1900s and is still falling. All right? And then we have internet use, increase, and the last century, and. Okay, so we can say internet use started to increase at the end of the last century and is still increasing. Okay? So that was A, B, and C. What else do we have? Let me take a look. Yeah, that's okay. Now let's go to exercise D. We're going to talk about marriage, birth, and death customs again. So we have 1. Write the 4 parts of the sentence below in the correct order, then put in the correct punctuation. So let's take a look at table 4 for a second before we do that. So we have sentences with a when clause. So when a child has a birthday, comma, people buy presents. When someone dies, the family buys a stone, right? Now let's go back to the information given. Here we have give them presents, someone has a birthday, people, and when. So writing it the same way as the sentences in table 4, I can say when someone has a birthday, comma, people give them presents, right? So again, when someone has a birthday, comma, people give them presents. Okay? Now let's move on to 3. Read the text about customs in the UK and make notes in figure 1, and then make notes about your culture in figure 1, okay? And cover the text about customs in the UK and write your own customs in your country, or write about your customs in your country. Okay? So here we have the UK, and here you have your culture. Every student will have a different culture. Totally depends on your country. So let's go here. Here we have customs for life events. There are 3 important life events in most cultures. There are special customs for each event in UK culture. Birth. When someone has a birthday, people give them presents. A child's present is often a toy, but some people give the child money. They often sing happy birthday to you at a birthday party. Okay? Marriage. When a man and a woman marry, the man gives the woman a ring. He puts it on the 3rd finger of the woman's left hand. Death. When someone dies, the person's family sometimes buys a stone. On the stone, they put the person's name, the date of birth, and the date of death. They sometimes put a sentence about the person. Okay, so For notes about birth, we can probably say when someone has a birthday, people give them presents. We can write presents down, right? And we can say if it's a child, then toys/money, and sing happy birthday to you, right? And a party. So these are for birth. And it's pretty similar in my culture in Egypt. That's what we usually do. So either presents, right? Or toys, a party, and again the same song, happy birthday to you. Okay? Then we have marriage. Okay, so we can say, let me actually take a look here. When a man and a woman marry, the man gives the woman a ring, puts it on the third finger of the woman's left hand. So we'll say man equals ring to the woman, right? And we can also say, what else can we say? Yeah, I think that's about it, right, you guys? So man, ring to woman. And for my culture, we'll say again, man, ring to woman. And in my country, they sometimes the woman gives a ring to a man. It's in silver, basically. Okay? Now let's go to death. Here we have, let me take a look. Someone dies, the person's family sometimes buys a stone. Okay. So in the UK, death, we'll say stone equals name, date of birth, and date of death, right? And sentence about a person, or sentence about the dead person. And for my culture, I'll say a funeral. That's a big part of my culture. And we'll probably a stone. I've never really went to a funeral in my culture, so that's interesting. So I think a funeral and a stone, and again, you know, the whole sentence about the person and name of birth and date of death, etc. Alright, so that was the first 2 pages of writing and grammar, you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Alright, you guys, so now moving on to the next page and lesson 6, writing and grammar. So let's go. We have exercise A here. Here we have follow the steps, complete the questions with the correct question word. Okay, so we're gonna have to complete these questions with the correct question words, and I'm sure you guys know what question words are. It's when, where, what, how, and why. Okay, so let's go with 1. We have dash did this custom start. So when did, let me write that down. When did this custom start? It started at the time of the Aztecs. Okay. 2. Did Steve and Liz go on honeymoon? They went to Florida. So, based on that question, we can say, where did Steve and Liz go on honeymoon? They went to Florida. Did you buy Tim for his birthday? I bought him an iPod. So, we can say, what did you buy Tim for his birthday? I bought him an iPod. Okay? Then we have D. Did they travel to the wedding? They took the train. We'll say, how did they travel to the wedding? They took the train. Okay? And finally, we have E. Did Sue leave the party early? She was tired. Based on that answer, we can say why. So why did Sue leave the party early? She was tired. Okay? Let's check our answers. We have when, where, what, how, and why. Okay? Perfect. Now let's move on. Let's go to 3, 4, and 5. Here we have put the words in the correct order to make questions. Okay, so here we have some scrambled words, and we're gonna have to correct them to basically make a question. So we have wedding, question mark, dress, Sally, where, did, her, and buy. Okay, so we can say where, question word, goes in the very beginning. Where did Sally buy her wedding dress? Question mark, right? So where did Sally buy her wedding dress? Okay, then we have B, new celebrate year Romans, how the question mark the and did. Okay, so we'll say how, again, question word. How did, we'll use when though, so how did, okay, doesn't want to come. How did the Romans celebrate the New Year, right? So how did the Romans celebrate the New Year? And question mark. Okay, now let's go to C. At when Martin question mark arrived did the party? So we can say when, okay, when did Martin arrive at the, okay, at the party? Question mark, right? So all of these are questions. So where did Sally buy her wedding dress? How did the Romans celebrate the New Year? And when did Martin arrive at the party? Okay? So now we have some information here. So use the information to write full questions. Okay, so here we have why, life expectancy, start, rise, Middle Ages. How can we use the information here to write a full question? We'll just have to unscramble them. So we'll say why did, it's basically the same thing as the previous, as question 3, but just you're gonna have to write them down instead. So why did life expectancy start to rise in the Middle Ages? Let me write that A down. And the Middle Ages, okay? And question mark. So why did life expectancy start to rise in the Middle Ages? Okay? And then we have B. What did the Egyptians do when child born? So we can say, what did the Egyptians, what did the Egyptians do when a child was born? And question mark, okay? So what did the Egyptians do when a child was born? Okay? Then we have 5. Study the example and write 3 more questions to ask a partner. Okay, so here we have an example. What did you have for dinner last night? So we want questions that start with what did. And basically not what did, any question word and did right after. So I can probably say, I'll start with 1 here. I'll say how did the Egyptians, let me go back, Egyptians, how did the Egyptians build the pyramids, right? The pyramids, question mark. So how did the Egyptians build the pyramids, right? Now, again, let's go to question 2. What can we say? We can say, why did you go without me, right? So now we have 2 questions. How did the Egyptians build the pyramids? And why did you go without me? And question mark, okay? And for the 3rd question, I can say, when did Sarah leave the party, right? And question mark. Okay, so 3 questions. How did the Egyptians build the pyramids? Why did you go without me? And when did Sarah leave the party? Okay? Now let's move on. Okay, let's go to, I think that's about it, right? Yeah, that's about it. Now let's go to exercise B here. Here we have, choose the correct sentence out of 1, 2, and 3 for A and B. Okay, so take a look here. Here we have, what happens at a wedding? Or can I say, what happened at a wedding? Or what does happen at a wedding? Which one do you guys think is the correct one? That's correct. The first one is the correct one. So we have, what happens at a wedding? Okay, now let's go for number 2, or B. what happened in 1939, or what did happen in 1939, or what happened in 1939. What do you guys think? That's correct. I'll choose the final one. So what happened in 1939? Okay? Excuse me. Then we have 2. Ask and answer the questions below in pairs. Okay. I want you guys to answer these questions. See if you know. These are just random information. So we have, what happened in 1945? What do you guys think happened in 1945? Yeah, the Second World War started. So World War II started in 1945. So the Second World War started. Then we have B. What happened in 1969? I think it was Neil Armstrong. He was the first man to walk on the moon. So we'll say the first man walked on the moon in 1969. Okay? And finally, we have what happened in September 2001, sorry. And I'm pretty sure everybody knows 9/11. So we will say planes crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. Okay? Now take a look at this. We have write 2 more similar questions to ask a partner, and you must know the answer. Okay. Write 2 more similar questions. So questions that are similar to these questions to ask a partner. Okay. I think I got one. So we'll say, what happened in 1879? What do you guys think happened in 1979 or 1879? I know that the light bulb was invented in 1879. Okay? Now, let's go to 2. We have what happened in 1936? That's my second question. So, what happened in 1936? Question mark. And the answer to that is that was the first year that a computer was ever invented. Okay? So yeah, what happened in 1987 and what happened in 1936. Alright, now let's move on. Here we have C, study tables 2A and 2B. Let us take a look here. Okay, so here we have sentences with 2 objects, so not 1 but 2 objects, right? Give me 1 second, let me plug this in. Alright, so we have the guest gave the woman a present. He gave her, person, object, and a present, object too, a thing. Okay, let's take a look at table B. We have again the guest, subject, gave, verb, a present, object 1 is a thing, and then we have a preposition, which is to the woman. Now the object 2 is person. He gave it to her. Okay, so he, subject, gave, verb, it, object 1, which is a thing, to a preposition, and her, object 2, which is a person. Okay, so I hope you got the form of these 2 down. I'll cover them now. Now, let's use, based on your memory, let's tick the correct sentences below. So, my father bought my brother a car. Or is it my father bought for my brother a car? What do you guys think? Yes, it's the correct one. We'll say my father bought my brother a car. Okay? Now let's go to 3 and 4. My father bought a car for my brother, or my father bought a car my brother. That's correct. It's 3. So my father bought a car for my brother. Okay? So 1 and 3. Alright, so that was exercise C. Now let's move on to exercise D. Here we're going to think again about events, ceremonies, and customs. You're going to be writing an email after this, so I'll give you an idea on how to write it down. So we have read an email from a Spanish student to a friend in the USA. So you're going to start with a hi and then the name of the person, obviously, a comma, and then start leave the rest of the line blank and move on. Okay, so I know you want to come to Spain. Next month is the best months. Next month is the best time. There's a big festival in my city called Las Fallas. People make figures and burn them on fires in the street. There are parades and people dress up in fantastic costumes. There are firework displays every day for a week. It's crazy. You will love it. Hope to see you soon, Carmen. Okay, so when writing an email, a simple email, like I said, you start with a hi and the name of the person you're writing to, comma, and then leave that line and go to the next one, right? Write whatever you want to write, and you can always end it with I hope to see you soon, if it's, informal, whatever, and then add your name. If it's a normal letter, you can add a letter, but no, you can just type in your name, and that's it, okay? Now I want you guys to, based on this style right here, I want you guys to write a similar email, right, to a friend or a relative about a festival or ceremony that's gonna happen in your country, okay? Now let's move on to E. Here we have read the sentences and circle the correct word or phrase in each case. Excuse me. So we have 1. The population of Europe falls or is falling because the death rate is higher than the birth rate. Falls or is falling, you guys? That's correct. We'll choose is falling. So the population of Europe is falling because the death rate is higher than the birth rate. And we have 2. Life expectancy started rise or to rise thousands of years ago. What are we going to choose? That's correct. We'll choose to rise. So life expectancy started to rise thousands of years ago. The average age of death still is rising or is still rising? Is still rising, the verb to be before. So the average age of death is still rising. And then we have 4. How did you come to the party, or how came you to the party? How came you is just wrong, you guys. Okay? You never say a question like this. How came you to the party? So how did you come to the party? Okay? And we have 5. What did happen last night, or what happened last night? We'll say what happened last night. Okay? Then we have 6. The man is giving to the baby a present, or the man is giving the baby a present. That's correct. We'll say the man is giving the baby a present. I don't need to add a to here. And finally, we have 7. When a person dies, or when dies a person, people buy flower or flowers. And we'll say when a person dies a person is wrong. Okay? So when a person dies, people buy flowers. Okay? So that was writing and grammar, you guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.